Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 5th chapter, text number 13. Puman naivaiti yadgatva bilasvargam gato yata pratyagdhama vidhayiha kimasat karma bhir bhaved. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Narada Muni had described that there is a bila or a hole from which having entered one does not return. The Aryashvas understood the meaning of this allegory. Hardly once has a person who has entered the lower planetary system called Patala been seen to return. Similarly, if one enters the Vaikuntha Dhama, Pratyak Dhama, he does not return to this material world. If there is such a place from which having gone, one does not return to the miserable material condition of life, what is the use of jumping like monkeys in the temporary material world and not seeing or understanding that place? What will be the profit? Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.6, Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. There is a region from which, having gone, one does not return to the material world. This region has been repeatedly described. Elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam yevam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. If one can properly understand Krishna, who has already been described as a supreme king, he does not return here after giving up his material body. This fact has been described in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Puman naiveti yad gatva. He does not return to this material world, but returns home back to Godhead to live an eternally blissful life of knowledge. Why do people not care about this? What will be the benefit of taking birth again in this material world, sometimes as a human being, sometimes a demigod, and sometimes a cat or dog? What is the benefit of wasting time in this way? Krishna has very definitely asserted in the Bhagavad Gita, Mam upaitya punarjanma dukkalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanah samsiddhim paramam gatim gataha. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. One's real concern should be to free himself from the repetition of birth and death and attain the topmost perfection of life by living with the Supreme King in the spiritual world. In these verses, the sons of Daksha repeatedly say, Kimasat karma bir bhaved. What is the use of impermanent fruitive activities? Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Puman naivaiti yad gatva bilasvargham gato yata pratyak dhama vidhayiha kim asat karma bhir bhaved. Narada Muni had described that there is a bila or a hole from which, having entered, one does not return. The Aryashvas understood the meaning of this allegory. Hardly once has a person who has entered the lower planetary system called Patala been seen to return. Similarly, if one enters the Vaikuntha Dhama, Pratyak Dhama, he does not return to this material world. If there is such a place from having gone, one does not return to this material condition of life. What is the use of jumping like monkeys in the temporary material world and not meeting, not seeing or understanding that place? What will be the profit? So, Bhagavatam is revolutionary in its content. So you can see another revolution. Revolutionary means what? Somebody who wants drastic change. So he is called a revolutionary. So Narada Muni is created a revolution in the hearts of the sons of Daksha. So when there is a revolution, you question the current state of existence. Status quo means what goes on, let it go on. Let's not disturb it. That is status quo existence. Revolution means you want to create a totally different way of things of doing. So, as per Daksha's interests, his sons took up the task of creating population. But somebody intervened, and that somebody was Narada Muni. So, post that intervention of Narada Muni, the goal of Daksha's children changed. So, that is the power of influence that Narada Muni had over Daksha's children, which is the Haryashvas. The Haryashvas were fortunate that it was a positive influence. There can be a positive influence, there can be a negative influence. Both are revolutionaries. One can be a positive revolutionary, one can be a negative revolutionary. In this material world, history has shown us at various points of time how revolutions have happened in our world. In modern history itself, we can see how at various points of time various kinds of revolutions have happened, and how at various points of time things just went on. Nobody had the drive, nobody had the interest to change what is going on. Let it be. In our own life, we have seen how Srila Prabhupada created an organization which is a revolution. How Srila Prabhupada established Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. How Srila Prabhupada showed the path of Krishna consciousness to people completely unaware to this kind of a spiritual life. They had no inclinations, they had no understanding, but how a man from nowhere just landed up in an obscure place and then made a society take up a very rigid religious system like ours. It is quite rigid to the people who have indulged in a totally different kind of a lifestyle, and for them to adapt to our Krishna conscious lifestyle was never easy. It was virtually impossible. But yet, one man, Srila Prabhupada, created this revolution. So you can see Here the example of Narada Muni intervening and trying to get the sons of Daksha take up a path that is different from what their father had told. And that is being mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So always, sometimes, because we in India, we are generally taught to be very submissive, not to rebel, not to ask questions, not to challenge. So, compared to the Western societies, we are very docile. If something is going on, we don't overtly challenge those things until and unless it becomes something very obvious to challenge. Generally, we are very docile. This is a very good quality, but at that same time, it can also be a negative quality also. Our actions should be driven by intelligence. Our actions should not be driven in mode of passion or mode of ignorance. Our action should have only one purpose, which is from the point of knowledge. So you see, when the Aryashvas, they take up a path which is not in line with their father's desire, seems to be not so appropriate. From a mundane, from a moralistic point of view. But yet, Srimad Bhagavatam quotes this example. So how do we learn? Whereas we are told we should respect elders, we should respect our superiors, we should never reject their words. And Daksha is definitely a respectable person, even in the eyes of material estimation. Over and above that, he is their father, which means their children has to obey what the father wants. But yet, the Aryashvas go or take up a path which is not what their father want. So the point here is that whether the Aryashvas, in what they did they do it out of passion? Did they do it out of mode of ignorance? Is what we should think about. Knowledge can be achieved only in Sattva Guna. Only when you are in knowledge, only when you are in Sattva Guna, you have the sense of discrimination. Nectar of Instruction clearly says this. That the ability to discriminate right and wrong is possible. In fact, it says, Nectar of Instruction says, ability to discriminate comes only when you are Madhyama Adhikari. In Kanishta Adhikari cannot be discriminative. He has to just obey and follow. So, even the idea of seeing things in reality, what is right, what is wrong, is very difficult. You cannot make out what is thing. When we say right or wrong, whether it is that action is driven by our lower modes, that is obviously wrong. Only when we are in real Sattva Guna can we really understand what is the right course of action. So here, the Aryashvas are taking up a path that may not be, in the mundane sense, the appropriate path, but yet they are taking up that path. So one is, how do we say that this is the right thing? First thing is, yes, for us it is very easy to understand because Narada Muni is instructing the Aryashvas, and that is sufficient for Aryashvas to take up the task. But that's from because we have sufficiently understood that Narada Muni is not an ordinary person, he is an authority, and he is a Mahajana, all these kind of things, we understand things. But how will a person who is not conversant with Narada Muni's position, with our Vedic understanding of Mahajana and all these kind of things, look at this kind of a scenario? When we cite the example, Narada Muni had told the Aryashvas, and Narada Muni is no ordinary person. And we say Mahajana Yenagata Panta. Somebody who has no idea of the scriptures, Mahajana, what is that? He is bewildered by, he will say you are blabbering something. Right? That's the thing. So how do we look at it from a very ordinary kind of person who is not conversant with this kind of a things? When we are preaching to people, and when people, because the same situation, all of us we repeatedly face or faced in our life when we had to take up Krishna consciousness in a more serious way. Some changes in our life we had to make. Although very minor changes, but those minor changes created so much of havoc during a very short period of time, which we have seen in our lives. How do we explain to people when we have to deal in similar kind of a situation where society, community, our family desires a particular way of life for us, but by the will of the Lord, we recognize that there is another way to lead our life, and we want to lead that life. Actually, if we very closely read Srimad Bhagavatam, especially these chapters, the way in which Srila Prabhupada talks about these things in Srila Prabhupada's purports, as well as the direct Bhagavatam verses, will help us to navigate these kind of situations. Somebody, like I gave you just now I told you that how when we are giving knowledge, if that other person is in mode of passion or mode of ignorance and we give knowledge, that person, it will just bounce off. Nothing will come. Nothing will enter him at all. It will just bounce back. Whatever you told Mahajana, you told Narada, all those kind of things you keep saying, it doesn't, never goes into his ears. He says, what is he talking? Some madness, he has been possessed now. That's the kind of thing generally people who are in that mode will think about it. So actually, if we are able to take advice from superior devotees during those situations, our ability to navigate this kind of, there's no any fixed formula. Every situation is new. But somebody who is under the guidance, somebody who is seeking guidance, somebody who is not acting whimsically on his own efforts, who is not dependent on his own efforts, you can see that person will be able to better navigate these kind of situations. Sometimes when we on our own try to handle a situation, we fail. We are not able to handle that kind of a situation. And this is true not only in this aspect, all of us are very new to Krishna consciousness. Maybe 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we may be in Krishna consciousness. But relatively to how much degree we were in material life, to what time we have spent in Krishna conscious life, it's a very, very small aspect of our time which we have led in spiritual life. So, when no matter how many years we are in, it is better that we seek advice. For example, sometimes in our spiritual life we are struggling. So many things we are struggling with our life. And when we are 5 years, 10 years, 12 years in the moment, 15 years in the moment, what happens is we stop seeking advice. We think, whom should I ask? I am already so old. I don't have anybody to ask. We stop seeking advice. But ultimately, internally, we know it's a struggle to practice Krishna consciousness. It's a struggle to keep up the same level of intensity of practice. Very, very difficult over a period of time. But a devotee constantly should try and seek advice from other Vaishnavas. Then only he can overcome. Otherwise it is not possible. Why are we here? Because we want to live. We could have lived in a community of our family, friends and society. They give us the support. They give us the bonding that helps us to live in this material world. Otherwise, its material world also is suffering. But at least when you are in your family, in the material world to deal, your wife, your mother, your children, your relatives, all those give you some comfort. But that is a material comfort. But we took up Krishna consciousness for what? Because we want to spiritually grow. And that's why we came into this community of devotees, this community of Vaishnavas. So we should actually seek the same kind of feelings and things like that from within the community of Vaishnavas. Of course, our main source of this strength, spiritual strength that we want to, is a morning chanting that we do, is the worship of the deities, is a regular hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. All these things are definitely the crux of our spiritual strength, the spiritual energy that we derive to continue in our spiritual existence. But over and above that, there is also an community bonding which gives us the strength. Somebody whom we can trust and talk to. It's very important. We have to establish that relationship. We have to seek out and seek guidance from other Vaishnavas. Then only, otherwise you will feel within the community you are isolated, you are alone. Although you are living with 50, 100 devotees together in a temple. You can say in our temple hundreds of devotees are there. Everything is there, but internally you will feel very, very alone. Nobody is there to care for me. And nobody is at fault. We ourselves are at fault. Because we have not, nobody is a Paramatma, nobody can read your mind. Right? You will have to reach out and express yourself, then seek guidance. Then we'll feel somebody is there, we feel cared, we feel wanted. Not from a material point of view, but from a spiritual point of view, that I can be here and still engage in spiritual activity. So that mood we have to create. Because see, natural taste for devotional service is not there right now. We are not on Raganuga platform. We don't have that. It's not natural for us, it's still unnatural because we are habituated to our material tastes, which we have cultivated from many, many things. Ultimately, habits are what you have cultivated for a long time, that becomes an habit. And why are we here? Because we want to cultivate spiritual habits. We want to cultivate Krishna conscious activities. And that Krishna conscious habits we want to build, so that we develop a taste for this. Right now we have cultivated material habits over and over, and we have developed a taste for material habits. Ultimately everything, taste comes from what? Taste comes from practice. What you practice, you develop a taste. Prabhupada gives the example of how Indra, when he became a pig. First day he was crying, second day he was crying, third day he said, wow, wonderful place. So he developed a taste, right? So taste means, it's not that you have to develop the taste by repeatedly doing things. Repeatedly, Indra, who became a pig, lived in that place, he developed a taste for that. Similarly, why we say repeatedly you chant Hare Krishna mantra, repeatedly you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, repeatedly you attend the Arati. Because by repeated hearing, repeated Shravanam and Kirtanam, you develop a taste. Taste doesn't come like that. You go and give ice cream to a pig. He says, I don't like this ice cream, I like some other cream. Because he has not developed a taste for ice cream. So if we want to develop taste, we have to keep doing that only again and again and again and again and again. But what we do, we repeatedly do this thing, like Madhupanda Babu constantly keeps saying. You take water, you boil it, and then you remove it. And then you try to boil it. No, that you can endlessly keep on doing this exercise, but you will never boil the water. Right? But if you really want to boil the water, you have to continuously keep it on the flame for a certain period of time. Then you will find the final fully boiled water. So similarly, we have to restrict ourselves within this community. When I say within this community, within the domains of our spiritual existence. That's why we say, you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this. There are so many do's, there are so many don'ts. And we strictly abide by those do's and don'ts. So you follow only some do's, you follow some don'ts. It doesn't work like that. There will be an imbalance. So the practice of Krishna consciousness, the way in which we take up Krishna consciousness seriously, that will determine our interest to continue again and again in our daily, and then that will develop into something which we cannot give up at all. It will become our nature, it will become our character. And repeatedly, Srila Prabhupada in his purports, he keeps on describing this. So we meet, when Prabhupada is quoting here that Janma Karma Chame Divyam Yevam Yoveti Tattvataha Tyaktva Deham Punar Janma Naiti Sorjuna. When we hear the birth and activities of the Supreme Lord perfectly, then there is no question of returning back to this material world. We quote this repeatedly to everybody. In our preaching, even a new bhakta will quote all these kind of verses. Maam upetyetu kaunteya punar janma naiti sorjuna. We say all these kind of things. What is the word saying? Maam upetyetu. One who is constantly doing upasana of Maam, of not me, of the Supreme Personality. But generally what we do, we are always doing Maam upetyetu. We are doing Maam Upasana, we are doing my Upasana. Even when we are quoting Maam Upetyatu Kaunteya, we are seeing whether that person is, okay, Bhava is staying to my quotation of the Sanskrit verse. Right? But that consciousness, that Maam Upasana means, it is Upasana of the Supreme. You are removing yourself from there. You are putting the real Maam. You are putting the real person there. You are putting the real person. In the earlier verses or in this verse only, I was just reading that how it is saying that Narada Muni is telling the Daksha's children that your real father is who? In an earlier purport, it is saying that the real father is, when the Daksha says, when Daksha's children, Narada Muni is saying that your real father is not Daksha, your real father is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. So you have to follow that order of the Supreme Personality. I'll just read that, it's very interesting where it is mentioned that. Narada Muni asked them to consider why they should follow their father's order to be entangled in family life. Indirectly, he asked them to find out within the cores of their hearts the situation of the Supreme Super Soul, Lord Vishnu, for then they would truly be experienced. In other words, one who is too involved in this material environment and does not look within the core of his heart is increasingly entangled in the illusory energy. No, not this. One more place it's there. Anyway, it is in substance, this is what it is. That Narada Muni is trying to say that your real father, you have not, you should understand that your real father is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you have to carry out that order of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not just look at it at a very relative level. Yes, relative level should be looked at in line with the absolute level. Nobody is saying that we should not respect the relative thing. But relative order or relative realities should always be in line with the absolute line. This is knowledge. So these are wonderful teachings and very revolutionary teachings where questions are asked, and as devotees we should also not allow our life to just linger on. Chal raha hai, जीवन चल रहा है, I'm in the temple, going on. No. Never allow our life to just linger on. Prabhupada says, only when there is, what is that? This one you can, only when there is life you can preach. For us, life means what? When there is Krishna conscious life, then you can preach. So we must just not become another passenger. No. We should be very, very intensely trying to practice Krishna consciousness. Not just become one more passenger, one more in the community. No. Just intensely go on, more seriously. There's unlimited depth to Krishna consciousness. That famous verse of the, which is what? Which is quoted more often, that how pure devotees of the Lord, they find more and more pleasure. What is that verse? Huh? No. You keep developing more and more pleasure, and it's unlimited. It goes on more and more. What is that verse? I forget. Nava rasa. You get new rasas in Krishna consciousness. Every day we should be able to develop. Then only we can continue. Then only we can motivate ourselves to go on in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise it's not possible. It's not sustainable. And Krishna consciousness gives us that possibility to develop new rasas. Like a child. You know, the child is, when the child is through 2 years, it is finding some rasa. When it is 4 years, it is finding new rasa. It is finding new rasa. Actually, in the material world, you see, they are finding new rasa, new iPhone, 13, 14, 15. Every moment to moment, they are bringing out new things and bewildering society. In the end, what? You are bewildered by all these things. Whereas in Krishna consciousness we find new rasa, what happens? We are liberated rather than bewildered. The more the material civilization develops, the more dukkha it will give, the more unhappy we will become. It is a fact. Because matter can never give you joy. Matter can give you only, Prabhupada quotes this word, phantasmagoria. It's just fantasy. Just gives you a feeling that I am getting happiness. But it is not. And even if it is so, the struggle to achieve that is phenomenal. We'll stop here if there's any question, comments.
Prabhu, you spoke about building friendship in community. Can you put a little more light on this, how to do this?
See, when we say friendship, sometimes when we use these kind of words, generally our conception of all this becomes material. But we should think of these things from the scriptural, from the spiritual dimension or Krishna conscious dimension. See, basically you see, all of us, because we have all come from different kinds of material lives, we may be going through so many internally, so many issues within ourselves, and we may think that I will solve it myself. It is good, and many things you may be able to do it also. But when sometimes some things are not solving, or it is remaining in us for a long time, then it is better to seek advice and guidance for our issue. Personally, with somebody whom you are happy with you are comfortable with, maybe they can give some input which can help you come out of that kind of a situation. It can be embarrassing, it can be painful, but yet that is why we are here in a community. In a community, we have to ultimately, Krishna consciousness is about taking support from each other to develop our consciousness. So, to build our consciousness, if somebody can help us, why not seek it and get it, right? But there are some roadblocks which our own mind creates. Our ego, first thing, big problem. Second is fear of so many things. So if we can overcome these kind of things, it can help us. See, this is not an absolute solution. Sometimes externally, not everybody can resolve and solve all problems. But this option is also available, which I only pointed out that we should seek that option. Sometimes we overlook that kind of an option. So in a community, we have the liberty to do that kind of a thing, which we can use it for our own benefit. The specifics of that, many aspects are there.
So Prabhu, is it that when we are friends with devotees, so it's easy to absorb the advice and follow, right?
No, it need not be only friends. I did not say friends. It means, like for example, Narada was not a friend of Aryashvas. Narada was a spiritual authority who gave instructions to them. But when I am saying spiritual guidance, there are so many things. Like for example, when in the material world, they advise, they constantly say that you should go to a psychiatrist and take help. Like supposing you have some mental problem, and many of us, even in the material world, psychiatrist. I remember once in our temple only in Bangalore, there was one incident. There was one devotee, very nice devotee, and very hard-working devotee, very sweet devotee he was. He had some problems. So our authority told, why don't you take him to a psychiatrist? So it was my task to take him to a psychiatrist. So I somehow cajoled him. He said, no, I won't come. I don't have to go to a psychiatrist. So he kept saying like that. Finally, somehow I coaxed him and took him to a psychiatrist. Till now he says, you branded me mad and took me to a psychiatrist. So you see, in the material world, why I am saying this example, there is a bad name that is, if you have to go to a psychiatrist, that means something is off. Right? It's not a good thing to go to that place. But, modern society keeps on saying, even though this so-called nomenclature should be removed. And it's like when you get a cold or fever, you go to a doctor. There's no any bad feeling about it. But when you have to go to a psychiatrist, then there is something else that people talk about. Right? So they are saying in the modern world itself, they are saying this kind of things which should be removed and it should be free. It's like one more problem, one material problem has come. You go to a psychiatrist, you get some treatment and you come back. What is the big deal about it? We all pass. Sometimes we get mental problems also. Sometimes we get physical problems also. There's a mental expert with whom we'll go and get treated. So we go. Similarly, sometimes in our spiritual life also, we have these glitches. If I go and tell this spiritual problem, then I will be branded. I cannot speak. Let me maintain my so-called wellness. I will show I am very well. I am very nice person. I am doing, everybody should tell that no. If I reveal, if I tell something, then within the community, my status will come down. Something like that, And all these kind of things are what? It is manogatan. It's our own speculations. It's not real, whether it is material or spiritual. But that's why I said, first is our ego. And how is manogatan coming? It's our ego. Our false ego wants to maintain that so-called facade of being great about it. So we have to break that false ego kind of a thing. Then only we can talk to, connect to, reveal ourselves. This false ego is a big barrier. We want to maintain that so-called, that I am somebody great about it. No, what is there? It's part of existence. We are all coming from different karmas, from various backgrounds. We are all coming from various bijas we have. So he cannot be, we are not Katvanga Muni or Ajamila, and where Prabhupada says, how much time does it take to become Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada says, 1 second. Are Bhaiya, I'm 20 years, not even little also I have gone in Krishna consciousness. So what is the thing? Right? So it's a long drawn process. It doesn't happen just like that. So that means if it's a long drawn process, then there are processes. We have to work through the system. We have to work through what is available, resources that are available. So use the resources. No, these are all resources. Mangalarti is a resource, chanting is a resource, deity is a resource. Other Vaishnavas are also a resource. If you have money in your hands and if you just keep it in your bank, what is the use of that? Spend it, no. When it is needed, you spend it. So use it. Use all the resources at your, what is available. That's the point that I want to make. That's all. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, we are discussing about that false ego of the devotee. So when other devotee finds some problem with that devotee, so if that devotee, as mentioned in Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, that Dadati Pratiti Grinati, so 6 kinds of loving exchange among the devotees. Finding out the perfect person who can, that correct. Devotee has to come forward and...
So loving exchange, what you said is exactly correct. What is that called?
6 kinds of loving exchange among the devotees.
And that what is the first? Dadati Pratigrinati.
Guhyam Akyati Prachati.
Guhyam Akyati Prachati. Yes. That's the principle. Wonderful principle, no? So we have to adopt that. Dadati Pratigrinati Guhyam Akyati Prachati. So if that principle is adopted, the problem with Guhyam Akyati Prachati is about, again, false ego coming in the way.
The comfortable devotee who can, he already have that loving relationship.
Yeah.
So then he will easily reveal that. So if we already established a loving relationship with the devotees.
Yes. Yeah, true. So what is the question?
The question is, I'm saying that the false ego will not come when we have that loving relationship with the devotees.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. When you have a loving relationship with other devotees, then your mental block is broken. There is no mental block. True. Very much true. See, we address it. These cannot be, all these kind of things cannot be forcibly imposed. Tomorrow you do. It will not happen like that. But when we talk, when we discuss things like that, we start thinking in that direction. That's the purpose, that's all. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.